The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So consider this. Tyrique Stevenson, whose boneheadedness allowed the Hail Mary play for the Commanders to beat the Bears last year, isn't running away from that, owning it. Meantime, the Commanders, they can't run away fast enough from that play. That was last year. However, as it was just pointed out to me, they're wearing the black uniforms, the same black uniforms that they wore last year for the Hail Mary game. So on one hand, they're saying, hey, remember how we looked when we won that game with that wild play? Well, we're going to wear those uniforms again. But oh, no. That was last year. This is this year. Don't even think about it. We'll get to the back and forth on that yesterday. Interesting things said by both Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels on that. Daniels, who threw the Hail Mary pass, and Quinn, who doesn't. He gets excited on the sidelines, but the sight of him throwing off his headset and running into the middle of the field is one of the great joyful moments of last season, and we'll get to that. It is not a joyful day in New York City. I worked there for 5 years. I know what a Yankee town it is in particular. Now, when I got there, the Mets were defending champions, and the Mets are still a big deal, but the Mets are number 2 in baseball. The Yankees are good. And if the Mets are good, the Yankees matter more. And if the Mets are not in the postseason, as they were not this year, and the Yankees are, then the Yankees matter a whole lot. And this is a team that's expected to be in the World Series. They were in the World Series last year, but they haven't won one in 16 years. 16 years is a long drought for the New York Yankees, who are, without question, I don't think this is debatable. They are the greatest franchise in sports. Some of it has to do with how they were able to win at a time where we didn't have the draft, and salaries were not a big factor, although they were a rich team and could afford to pay stars. But on the other hand, they delivered over the years. They are a team that is used to winning championships. And once again, they're going to go another year without winning a title. And you look at the career of Aaron Boone, who is Hall of Fame bound. He's a 2-time MVP, but has played in one World Series. One World Series last year. Is going to be 34 years old before the start of the next season. So how many more years is he going to be Aaron Boone? 5 maybe? 5 at most. Does he end his career without a World Series? Is he kind of like Don Mattingly, who's not a Hall of Famer? Now, whether or not Aaron Judge wins a World Series, I don't think is going to necessarily affect. Now, it can't affect. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the great power hitters of all time, and he's one of the great Yankees of all time. But the team just cannot win. 10 years in New York, got the big contract extension a couple of years ago. There's going to be a season next year. We don't know if there's going to be a season in 2017. A lot of the chatter now has that the owners are ready to lock them out for an entire year to finally get a salary cap. So we'll see where that goes. But the irony of the Yankees is this. This is a franchise that at least I grew up with under the ownership of George Steinbrenner, who loved to make changes. Steinbrenner once changed managers 11 times in a 5-year span from 1978 to 1982. Some of that was hiring and firing Billy Martin a bunch of times. He cycled through 8 general managers in 11 years from 1978 to 1988. But in the last 28 years, and some of that overlaps when the boss was still alive, over the last 28 years, the Yankees have had 1 GM, Brian Cashman, and 3 managers, Joe Torre, Joe Girardi, and Aaron Boone. That's it. That's the list. Now, they haven't had a losing season since 92, and they've made it to the playoffs 8 times in the last 9 years. But coming up short, like losing in the divisional series, as they did last night to Toronto, losing in 4 games, losing 5-2 last night, and outscored 34-19 in those games and out-homered 9-3. That's not good. And this, I don't think, would sit well with the boss. I can't imagine he'd be talked into keeping Aaron Boone, who, by the way, does have 2 years left on his contract. But his postseason record, it's losing record now, 25-27, and playing American League Central teams for whatever reason in the playoffs, he does particularly well. He's 15-4, but against all the others, he's 10-23. They were eliminated by the Astros in 2017, the Red Sox in 2018, the Astros in 2019, Red Sox in 2021, Astros 2022, and then they lost in the World Series in 5 games to the Dodgers last year. It's stability, but it's stability of not good enough. Not good enough. Yeah, a lot of organizations would love to make the playoffs 8 out of 9 years. Here, we've had just disgrace since they won the World Series. 6 years, losing records every year, out of the playoffs every year, and last place 5 of those 6 years. This is Boone, Aaron Boone, last night after seeing his team once again come up short, losing in 4 in the divisional series.
The ending's the worst, right? Especially when you know you have a really good group and a group of guys that really came together so well, at the right time. The final couple of months, this was a team, and it's a team that played for one another, did a lot of really good things, and we got beat here. Credit to, the Blue Jays and the year they've had, and they beat us this series. Simple as that. And it doesn't make it any easier. It's a beat-up room in there. They're still sharing with one another. I felt like I should come out and owe you guys this, but know that, the guys are in there still sharing with one another because they truly became a really close team and a really good team. And it's the awful part of this is the journey you go on and this has been a tough year for me personally, but all you go through to kind of become this kind of team you think can really do something special, and for it to abruptly end is always difficult.
Yeah, especially when you have these high expectations of getting back to the World Series and accomplishing what you didn't do last year. Now, this was interesting on the Fox set. You got 2 former Yankee stars. Both of them played on that last championship team in 2009. One is in the Hall of Fame. The other will never get there because of performance-enhancing drugs. But this was Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez with yet another post-mortem on a Yankee season that comes up short. A-Rod first.
Aaron's been very classy. We've all been very consistent with that. Honestly, from the entire organization, he's the one guy with circle that has least to blame. I mean, he's got a lot of talent, but for me personally, one of the worst construction of a roster I've ever seen. You have 3 left-handed catchers, you have 5 DHs, you have a first baseman in and out. It's just a very, very difficult hand for Boone, and honestly, they were exposed against a much better Jays team.
Yeah, I mean, look, Aaron said it. They got beat. Last year you can sit back and talk about the World Series in Game 5, and you can say Yankees beat themselves in that particular game. In this series, the Toronto Blue Jays proved that they were a better team. Right? From top to bottom, they were a better team. What's tough is for the Yankee fans, right? This is the 2nd year in a row that they've watched another team celebrate on their home field. And you can feel the frustration. But, look, those press conferences that Aaron just did, we've all been in them. They're very, very difficult because we've been a part of teams that we thought – we're going to win a World Series. Thought we were the best team, and it didn't happen, right? So I think sometimes you got to sit down and let it all digest for a minute. And I think it's probably a longer conversation to what you had brought up, Al. But Aaron did a good job. I mean, look, he's working with what he has to work with, and he sticks up for his players. I know he takes a lot of heat. But, look, I'm not saying it from any inside knowledge, but I'm pretty sure Aaron's not the one that's calling every move that they make throughout the game.
Okay, two things there. One, A-Rod saying the roster was constructed poorly. That's throwing it right at the feet of Brian Cashman, who's been on the job for 28 years. And then you hear Jeter say at the end that Boone may not be calling all the shots. Now, there's a lot of that now in baseball, that the analytics tell you what moves to make, and you've got kind of a script that you're supposed to follow. But are these two guys, and they both played under Brian Cashman when Cashman was the GM, and Cashman made the deal. I don't know if he made the deal to draft Jeter. I don't know if I think that might have been Gene Michael, but he was the one that engineered the A-Rod trade to get him from Texas. And they're both saying, hey, bad job on constructing the roster, and Jeter insinuating there that the front office is calling a lot of the moves. Again, that's not unusual now in baseball. The days of Casey Stengel managing by his wit and guile and things like that's over with. That's a lot different now. But well, so and you may be in the camp of good. It's the Yankees. They deserve this. David Ortiz, who won World Series with the Boston Red Sox, one of the great Red Sox players of all time, also on the set. To the victors go the spoils. The Red Sox didn't win, but the Yankees lost. And that is something that he was actually able to celebrate on the set, as they had Vlad Guerrero getting a champagne bath in the Blue Jays clubhouse as he and Ortiz kind of danced on the Yankees' grave.
Dale, the Yankee lose. Let's go, baby. Let's go. Hey, let's do it again. The Yankees lose. The Yankees lose. Let's go, baby.
But you don't take it personal. I get it.
One more. The Yankees lose.
Oh, my God.
I don't think there's anything else left to be said. Vlad, you were awesome. We'll see you in the next round. Go enjoy it, all right?
Llámame. Dale, te llamo de una vez. Gracias.
Papi.
Gusto en verlo. Gracias.
The first family of Canadian baseball, Vladimir Guerrero and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Vladimir Guerrero didn't win any World Series, spent most of his career playing for the Montreal Expos, but his son has a chance to get there this year, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and he torched the Yankees, hit some big home runs, and sends New York home for the winter, as once again they come up short 16 years without winning the World Series. Meantime, got the Dodgers, maybe not in trouble. They got rocked last night by the Phillies 8-2. Kyle Schwarber with a couple of home runs, but they still lead the series 2-1, and they can wrap it up tonight. But interesting the way last night unfolded, in that they put Clayton Kershaw in relief. Tanner Scott, left-handed reliever, not available. He was not with the team because of a personal matter, they said. They'd already used two left-handed relievers. So it's eighth inning, 2-run game. I know they're behind, but let's stop the bleeding. Let's put Kershaw in and see what he could do. He threw a match on the on the gasoline and just blew it up. He couldn't get the three additional outs. So JT Realmuto led off with a home run. 6 other batters reached base. 5 additional runs. 8-2 was the final score. And Kershaw, I would say a good soldier for sure, but he just didn't get it done. And, for all of Kershaw's success in the regular season, and he's been one of the great regular season pitchers in the modern era, he's not good in the postseason. He's just not. And, maybe you could say it's unfair to throw him into a situation like that, but that's why you put him on the postseason roster. You had him available for situations like that. Mookie Betts said, quote, "It was hard to watch, but we can't use 2 innings to he's going to have a statue out in front of Dodger Stadium. Keep in mind and understand that in the grand scheme of things, Kershaw is a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it. So if you let 2 innings kind of ruin that, you don't know baseball. Well, this really isn't a Hall of Fame discussion right now. This is a discussion of whether Kershaw is an asset or a liability moving forward for the Dodgers. And I would imagine, out of respect, he's retiring. But out of respect, they're going to keep him on the postseason roster as they move forward, assuming they do. They got to win 1 of 2 against the Phillies. But this just adds to the postseason misery that Clayton Kershaw has had. The fact of the matter is he has not been good in the postseason. And, for all you want to say about, he's been one of the greatest Dodger pitchers of all time, yada, yada, yada. Sure he has. But, success is measured in what you do in winning championships. And Sandy Koufax went out in a sweep against the Orioles, but the year before, as we've been talking about this week with the 60th anniversary of sitting out Yom Kippur, he pitched 3 games and won 2, the last one on 2 days rest, a shutout to wrap up the series in 7. So that's the legacy that Kershaw does not quite have. Chicago won last night, so they stay alive against Milwaukee. Got Game 4 tonight. And then Friday night in Seattle, Game 5, Detroit and the Mariners. And last night, the Tigers win the game 9-3. So that's where we are in the baseball. Meantime, what you hear coming up next is both Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels say, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't throw this Hail Mary in now. That was 2024. This is 2025. That's up ahead. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
This Bill Belichick thing, he said, Elmer Fudd style, is getting more and more messy. There are reports that he and North Carolina are working on buyout provisions right now. They want a soft landing spot. Now, I don't know what that's going to mean because, is he going to go jump to a pro team this year, a team that fires his coach? No, I don't think so. I think that's over with, and nobody's going to take him in college. Does he go back to broadcasting? Really wasn't that good at that. He was okay. It was kind of cool to see this guy who hadn't said anything to the media for 30 years, talk and be funny sometimes, but no. I don't think that's going to happen. But the school had to put out a statement yesterday, and really wasn't a statement of denial. It was more like damage control, and I don't know if they can plug the hole in this dike right now because it is gushing, and they're a mess. They got a bye week this week, so call off the dogs for a week, but then they go to Cal. They get their doors blown off at Cal. Whew. Yeah, it really could get messy there. All right, last October, it was late October, so it's not quite a year, but the Commanders were, looking pretty good. They're coming off a blowout win of Carolina at home, but they did it with Jayden Daniels hurt. Marcus Mariota came off the bench for him early in the game and rolled it up. It was like 40 points, and they won the game. And Daniels was doubtful at one point, questionable, and then, right up until game time, we didn't really know until they put out the inactives, and he was ready to go, and he played, and as we found out later, he was playing with a broken rib, and it came down to the end of the game when it really shouldn't have, because Chicago had gone ahead in the game. They had gone down the field, scored a touchdown, added a 2-point conversion with 27 seconds left to go, and it was going to take a touchdown to beat them. You had 27 seconds left. Commanders had no timeouts, and Daniels was just as cool can be. He completed a pass to Terry McLaurin out of bounds to set up with seconds left to play and needing a touchdown to win the game. He set up the final play of the game, as was called memorably on CBS by Jim Nantz and Tony Romo.
Comes down to one last play, and it's going to be getting longer by the second. You're all the way back at the 30-yard line. Now you can step into it. Here comes the Hail Mary with the game on the line, and the ball is caught! Caught! It's a miracle! It's Noah Brown! Oh, my goodness! This town is going crazy. It's a madhouse in Landover, Maryland.
He did it.
Oh, this one will be paid back over and over again for decades. The ball tipped by Stevenson. Noah Brown just standing back there all alone. Plucks it out of the air for the victory.
I know this sounds crazy, but there's a method to the madness here. Everyone usually goes and jumps to the ball. You always put one guy behind and try and put one in front and have 2 or 3 go jump for it. And Daniels extending this play and the time allowed everyone to get down there in position to go toward the ball and be in their spots. And what a game, Jim.
There are no words.
Yeah, well, what they didn't really talk about at the time, and I don't know if they necessarily recognized it, but that Hail Mary was aided greatly by great stupidity by Bears cornerback Tyrique Stevenson, because as Washington was lining up for that final play, Tyrique Stevenson is turned around to the people in the end zone at FedEx Field, and really that was one of the first games that we've had here in a long, long time where the crowd seemed at least tilted towards Washington, because even, under the first year ownership that Josh Harris, and I went to a Miami game. I went to a Dolphins game with my brother-in-law. The place was 3/4 aqua. Even though they were out from underneath Dan Snyder, people were hesitant to go, and the games were selling. Eagles games, all green, the same thing. So Bears games seemed to be a lot of burgundy and gold there, and in the end zone, people were taunting Tyrique Stevenson, and like an idiot, he's waving at him while this play is unfolding. He finally realizes, oh my God, he's got to get over there. He gets in front of the play, tips the ball in the air. He's the one that tipped it. Instead of doing his job, which would have been to guard Noah Brown in the back of the end zone to make sure that he didn't catch a tip, he tipped the ball, and Noah Brown picked it off. Stevenson has recently participated in a podcast. It was done by Courtney Cronin, covers the Bears for ESPN. And he talked to reporters yesterday about what he had said in the podcast and how bad he feels a year later about the whole thing.
Like I said on the podcast, it still hurts because at the end of the day, I'm a football player. And the last thing I want to do is have a play that's not so good and my name be memorable. On top of all the good things I did, it could overshadow that. But just use it as motivation to come out and stay focused on all tasks. And definitely learn to wait till the clock hit 00. So just use that as a learning curve to mature and be the cornerback that this team needs.
What was it like going through that?
It was harsh, it hurt my feelings. And that's the best way I can explain it. It just hurt my feelings, just, being a football player and having one of those mistakes that's going to linger around, even when my son grew up, got to explain that to him. So definitely hurt, but just use it as fuel.
Hurt your feelings. Yeah. Well, how about the feelings of the other players? He said that he apologized in a team meeting the following day and was backed by his teammates for owning the mistake, but said, quote, they gave me support. Being honest, I got a couple of side eyes, but that comes with it. Like I was saying on the podcast, this is what we do for a living. This is who we are in some cases, and the best thing we can do is go out there and make great plays. How about doing your job instead of being an idiot and being a cheerleader? Stevenson's teammates say that what happened against Washington will have no bearing on the type of player he is currently. Cornerback Kyler Gordon said to ESPN that S ended after that. He took it in, apologized, and I feel like from then on he's been that way, that he's not going to let people create this narrative about him, go out there, still do what I do, and feel like what it's like keeping the forces and focus up every week. Okay, yeah, there is that. But, that's going to linger, and there's going to be signs out there on Monday night. I'm going to be there, by the way. And I was there last year for the Hail Mary, which is unbelievable. But there'll be people, mocking him and giving him a very hard time. You can count on that. So we'll see if he's completely moved past it. The Commanders, and this is what they're saying publicly, last year. But again, they're going to be wearing the same black uniforms that they wore last year for that game, and this is the only game they're going to wear those uniforms this year. This is Dan Quinn, who clearly, he's pretty expansive in his answers usually. He wanted to put the lid on this as much as possible at his news conference yesterday. He knew he was going to be asked about it, but one of the first questions, if not the first question from John Keim, was what effect did the Hail Mary have on the season that Jayden and the rest of the team had last year?
I think, for one, I think he showed a lot of toughness. He was coming back from getting banged up, and I thought for him, that just kind of solidified, I guess, what we already knew about the toughness and who he is and what he does. I think past that, man, just some belief, John. That would be the one thing that you're never out of the fight.
Yeah, it did seem like that propelled the season, though. 2 weeks later, they did start a 3-game losing streak. So, there were still some bumps in the road, but to be able to do that, I think, added a lot to the season. The Bears fell apart. They lost 10 straight. Offensive coordinator Shane Waldron and Matt Eberflus, the coach, were both fired in the subsequent weeks. Obviously, that wasn't the end of the discussion with Quinn about the Hail Mary, so they went further in and asked him what was he feeling like as he was watching that Hail Mary unfold.
Probably like most of us, there's the longer a scramble goes on a Hail Mary, at least the ball is going to get off. So you're not looking down the field too early, but to make somebody miss, you're waiting, and then probably like most of us, a collective gasp. And so I don't know if there was a lot of activity in that little space in between from he's going to get it off to the catch. I think everybody just and you're waiting and not knowing. And so that's probably the space that I was at. But it's a play that's also, and I think Aaron Rodgers probably been one of the best that I've seen going against it, of buying time, when to go, how high you have to throw it to create trajectory to go down, because you have to have time for the players to get down the field so far. So it's something that the guys work on. But, it was rare and fun and all those things.
Hi, Coach. On the same topic, when you're helping the guys prepare this week, how much do you talk about that play and the end of that game versus recognizing Chicago's a different team this year and you have a whole different week of preparation ahead?
Yep, that was the first I talked about it right there.
You haven't adjusted with the team at all?
0.
Do you plan to?
None.
Gotcha. That's all I had. Yeah. Thanks.
This last year's story, it was awesome. We loved it, but it doesn't apply to this week's game at all unless we get into that exact scenario and that exact situation. So then we can talk about it. But until then, we got a lot of stuff to get better at and work on to get ready.
Yeah, that message was apparently delivered loud and clear, because shortly after Jayden Daniels had his news conference.
I know last year was last year, but there's a lot of attention on the Hail Mary, obviously playing the Bears again. What is your biggest memory of that night, and then what is the biggest takeaway for you from that play?
I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. I just leave that last year. It speaks on is about itself.
They circled back to this one more time.
You don't want to look back at last year, the Hail Mary, all that. You don't seem to want to do that with a lot of things. Why is that? What don't you want to look back at?
That Hail Mary ain't gonna help us win a game on Monday. So what's the point?
Yeah, turn the page. Do not bask in the glory of last year. Last year was last year. Even championship teams will do this. The coach may show up the first day of practice and say, okay, here's my championship ring from last year. I'm now going to take it off, and I'm going to put it in my pocket, and I'm not going to wear it the rest of the year, because that was last year. This is this year. And, like Nick Saban says, the biggest threat to success is success. That people tend to sit back, and you don't want to have a feeling going into this game, well, we beat them last year, so, if crazy things happen this year, you kind of deal with it. No, they got to stay hungry right now, and losing the Atlanta game like they did, that's got to be a bad taste in their mouth, and it's got to linger for a while. So they need to get through that. As far as the injuries go, good news, they got Noah Brown back on the practice field yesterday. So Noah Brown, if, as Quinn said, the same scenario presents itself, he would be on the field to haul in that play. And then Terry McLaurin did not practice, but has not been ruled out. It's interesting that they did not put him on injured reserve. Very encouraging. So he could play this week, and if not this week, he'd play the following week against the Dallas Cowboys. Looks like. Otherwise, they would have put him on injured reserve. Sam Cosmi's another story. Cosmi, from listening to this, I'm going to play about a minute and a half with what he did with the reporters yesterday. Cosmi, as you know, has been out since a really devastating knee injury in the playoff game against Detroit. So that's a little over 9 months ago. And, these type of knee injuries usually take a year to get better. Can he get back on the field before that? Yeah. I mean, he's been activated off the physically unable to perform list, and the window is open. So he's got to play sometime within the next 4 weeks. It could be this week, could be next week. This was Cosmi on the possibility that it could be this week.
Yeah, I felt good. Today was a good day of practice. You kind of like the nervous system's still getting used to it. So honestly, I'm taking a week, day by day. Tomorrow, if we do have padded practice, with me, my first padded practice of the whole year. So I'm just trying to get the nervous system to get rolling. I'm talking to DQ and AP, thoroughly through it. But I feel like if it's not this week, it'll be versus Dallas.
Who makes that decision? Is that you, or is it do you?
It's like a collective discussion, based off of how everything's gone and the progression of everything, So we're talking through it. Like I said, taking each day and every single practice, and just seeing how it does and how it feels. And again, like my nervous system's still getting used to. So I'm pushing it. I'm pushing it in practice, taking as many reps as I can, to get in shape as fast as possible, So, I feel like I'm in shape, but it's a different stimulus from going and blocking a bag to a person and hitting and doing all that. It's completely different. So from not having done that for 8 months, it's different.
You mentioned the padded practice. How important is it that you have to have that padded practice before you suit up?
It would be nice. It would be nice, selfishly. But if not, it is what it is.
So we'll know more. That's Sam Cosmi hoping to get back on the field if in fact he can practice. And he did some limited work, some last week and some yesterday, and we'll see if he can go. Meantime, you got this crazy situation going on in Cleveland where already Joe Flacco, who was benched and didn't play last week and then traded to the Cincinnati Bengals, has been named their starting quarterback. He is going to be starting against the Green Bay Packers for the second time in about 4 weeks here. He's only been in Cincinnati, barely got off the plane, and when they named him the starting quarterback, that's going to be Sunday against Green Bay. He says this was Zach Taylor, the coach. He says, I only met him once before he came here, but I know his game. Played against him, I don't know how many times, a lot of times, very comfortable with his style, concepts. He's been good at things that fit in with what we do. The terminology, a lot of carryover, more than I would have anticipated, so we can get him up to speed quickly. Yeah, hey, nice to meet you. You're my starting quarterback. That's kind of the way it went with Zach Taylor and Joe Flacco. In the meantime, in Cleveland, we know that, once again, they're going to go with Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel looked pretty good last week, so he's going to start again this week against Pittsburgh. But Shedeur Sanders, Kevin Stefanski won't commit to him as the backup. And there's a possibility Bailey Zappi, who's been around for a long time, in and out, got some playing time with New England under Bill Belichick. So there's the possibility that he'll come off the practice squad and move into the backup spot. Now, the feeling was that Shedeur looked pretty good during the preseason. Clearly, he's been number 3 all year. And now they don't know whether he will be the backup quarterback. I guess he would have been the backup last week with Flacco not playing, although Flacco was still on the roster. It's interesting whether they would have played him with knowing that they were going to deal him. I mean, I'm sure that deal was in the works for a couple of weeks. So here's my feel on Shedeur. I think Shedeur, and this is similar in this way to Dwayne Haskins. Now, he wasn't a first-round pick, but Dwayne Haskins, as we know, I mean, this has been said by Jay Gruden, so this isn't just reported. Jay Gruden did not want him. His coaches did not want him. The owner, as Gruden said, hopped off his yacht and drafted him. He wanted to take him because he was local. He went to the same high school as his son, Bullis, played at Ohio State. The coaching staff scouted him. They didn't want him, but Snyder had to have him and had to pacify him by giving him Joe Theismann's number, which was really ridiculous, and it was a tragedy. They had to cut him, and then he went to Pittsburgh for a year and died in a car accident. Terrible thing. But the comp is this. I think Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, decided that he wanted Shedeur Sanders. I don't think Kevin Stefanski wanted him. And once you give a coach the player, it's up to the coach whether he plays him or not. It's not up to the owner. Unless the owner says, I'm going to fire you if you don't play him, and then he's got a choice to make. But I don't know if it's gotten to that point. But the fact that he won't even commit to making him the backup quarterback in a lost season, a season where, by the way, I think they have the number 5 pick, or they have one of the top picks for next year. They're going to be picking high. Let's put it that way, and can probably take another quarterback. That is, He says he's pleased, Stefanski, with how Gabriel and Sanders have prepared to this point. But if you're not going to make a commitment to being the backup, and this is what Stefanski says, I've always had to be mindful of our players and our players' development. I want to make sure I'm always doing what's best for our player and, of course, our team. Like last week with the change to Dillon, you got to think long and hard about that because these are young players that you've invested in their development. So this has the smell of that. This has the smell of an owner's choice in Shedeur Sanders. And I think he would have eventually been drafted. He went in the 5th round. But this was a Mel Kiper first-round guy. This was one of the big stories of the draft coverage on ESPN, Mel continuing to melt down as Shedeur continued to fall down the board. But with what we're seeing in Cleveland, coaching staff has no confidence in playing him. I mean, that's what happened here with Haskins. They knew he wasn't ready to play at the beginning. They threw him in a backup spot against the Giants. Didn't look good. His first start was against the New England Patriots, who were still the New England Patriots then. Brady was still there. And they got blown out, and then Gruden got fired, and then they played him. But, he had some good moments and some bad moments. And even in the best moment when he won his first won his first game against Detroit, and rather than be available to take a knee to run out the game, he was taking selfies with fans. Shedeur, nothing off the field or anything like that. But this has the look of that. If you're not even going to name him your backup quarterback, when you've traded your starter, when you're using your backup, and now all he has to do is be available just in case something happens to Dillon Gabriel, and you're not going to even commit to that, that to me smells like Jimmy Haslam saying, we're going to take this guy against the wishes of his coaching staff. All right. Coming up in the next hour, more from Dan Quinn on this matchup with the Bears, and we'll delve into the mess that is Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. So I tried to do a nice thing. I got a book from a guy who wrote about the Colts leaving Baltimore in the middle of the night in those Mayflower vans in 1984. Book was 510 pages. Started to read the book. Could only get through about 80 pages. Redundancy after redundancy. Finally gave up. Wrote him a letter, said, I like the idea, love sports history, subject I was interested in. Just needed to do a little more editing here. Research, great, but you just can't put out a 64-ounce steak and say eat the whole thing. Give me the best parts, do some editing. So I'll read you the response to it. It's, I guess it's the old no good deed goes unpunished. We'll get to that later this hour. Meantime, more yak from Ashburn yesterday as the Commanders get ready to play the Monday night game against the Chicago Bears. Good news, Noah Brown, who caught the Hail Mary, was back on the practice field yesterday, so they're hoping to have him a full go for Monday night once again. And Terry McLaurin did not practice. We'll find out more today. I can't imagine he's going to go today because it's a padded practice. But the extra day means, he could play in practice on Friday, and then I guess they would have a walkthrough maybe Sunday, something. I don't know how they're going to stretch out the week, but that is something to keep an eye on. The injuries. Also, Sam Cosmi is indicating he could be back. So, close to as full health as possible. That's going to be a big thing. And as much as they try to run away from the memories of the Hail Mary last year, that's last year, that's last year, that's last year, they're also going to be wearing the same uniforms that they wore last year, which is the only time this year they're going to wear those black uniforms. And they're telling the fans to show up in black. And now they're looking for what they really didn't fully have last year, although it was pretty close. I was there. Home field advantage. This is Dan Quinn.
We've got to demonstrate that to the fans, and make sure they know how hard we want to play for them. And in return, make it such a loud environment that it can be challenging and they can affect the game with snap counts and other things that go into that. So it's definitely something that we don't take for granted. And that's why we're so pumped to be back home after a couple weeks on the road, to get back at Northwest and get rolling with everybody.
One of the storylines last year was the matchup of the two top quarterbacks from the draft, but there was a little hesitancy because they were unsure whether Jayden was going to be able to play. We didn't know until a couple hours before the game if he was going to be a go. Now you have the two top quarterbacks off very different first years. Not that Caleb Williams was a bust, but he was sacked like 64 times. The team went through a 10-game losing streak. The coach got fired. The offensive coordinator got fired. It was a mess. It was a mess for the Bears last year, where it was sunshine and lollipops for the Commanders, and Jayden Daniels was the Rookie of the Year. But if anybody's looking for a little bit of I told you so from Jayden Daniels, Ben Standing of Substack tried and failed.
He's been doing his thing, so I always keep up with football in general. So he's been doing his thing, and we got our hands full coming up on Monday night with him and his offense. Is just the whole team in general.
Prepared for you to tell me no, but do you pay it? He was number one. You were number two. Does it none of that matters?
Nah. He got drafted number one. I got drafted two. Nothing we could do to change that.
Yeah, he's not going down that road. He's really smart. He's not expansive in news conferences, but he watches what he says, and he knows exactly what he's going to say before he says it. Really admire him for that. As far as the defense goes, better last week. They were terrible the week before against Atlanta. The ability to stay even, keep up consistency with what they're doing, something that Von Miller was talking about yesterday.
That's been one of our priorities, is just get off the roller coaster, having good performances, then bad performances, good performances, and bad performances. We just want to get off the roller coaster and stay even keel. Just really, grounding ourselves in our fundamentals and everything that stayed true through training camp.
And Bobby Wagner, captain of the defense.
We just got to keep doing a better job of communicating. Obviously we want to improve our tackling, make the plays that come to us, and then obviously start more faster. I think we got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot early on in the game with penalties and things of that nature. But I like how we responded, and we just got to pick up where we left off.
All right, so that'll be Monday night against the Chicago Bears. Let us get to the mess with Bill Belichick and the University of North Carolina. God, where do we begin? Well, here's how bad things are. They are 2-3, but against the Power 4 teams that they played, they've lost by a combined total of 120-33. In the ACC opener last week against Clemson, they lost 38-10. They were down 28-3 in the first quarter, and North Carolina allowed touchdowns on 2 of the Tigers' first 4 plays. There are rumors that are floating around there now that North Carolina is working on a buyout for Bill Belichick with 7 games to go. And that the thing that Belichick wants to make sure of is he has a soft place to land, like, he's going to TV, or he's taken over this NFL team, which is looking for an interim coach for the rest of the year. I don't think that's going to happen. But everything that's added up has turned this into an absolute circus. And less and less of it is about the 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. That was the story of the offseason, where she's, controlling everything. They're putting out these goofy pictures of the two of them. He's doing an interview about his book for CBS, and she steps in off the set and said, "Don't answer that question. Don't answer that question." Then they strut into North Carolina like, "Hey, we're from the big bad NFL. We know what we're doing, and we're going to be the 33rd NFL team." Belichick hires Mike Lombardi, who is his former front office guy, both in Cleveland and New England. And Lombardi got himself his own deal worth $1.5 million a year, saying we consider ourselves the 33rd team. And everything they've done has been absolutely messy. It's angered a lot of people in college football and in the university as well. And then this past week, Lombardi sent out a letter to donors for North Carolina calling this a rebuild. And then you had players pushing back on the idea after the Clemson loss and they've also scrapped the documentary that was supposed to be on Hulu. Belichick said, and this was really embarrassing, after the New England win over Buffalo on Monday night, he wouldn't let anybody on the in the organization, in the North Carolina organization, put out anything about New England winning, because he's still angry at the Patriots and Bob Kraft for pushing him out. And it's a really bad look because Drake May was the quarterback who pulled it off, and the name May is North Carolina royalty. Drake May with a great career at North Carolina, and his brother was part of a national championship basketball team there. And then WRAL reported widespread discontent in the locker room. The Athletic reported that cornerbacks coach Armand Hawkins was suspended for recruiting violations. Seems minor. It's, sideline passes for family members, but still, you got to know what the rules are. He's got 4 years left to go on a deal that pays him $10 million a year. I guess there is a buyout. Now, the buyout is $1 million. I'm not sure if the school can just buy him out for $1 million. I think if Belichick wants to leave, it's $1 million. But the school put out a joint statement last night to kind of tamp this down from both Bill Belichick and the university. Belichick saying, "I'm fully committed to North Carolina football and the program we're building here." The athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, said that Belichick had, quote, "the full support of the administration." That's not denying that they're working on a buyout there. That's just a statement to turn down the temperature. Fact of the matter is, this has turned out to be an absolute disaster. And Stephen Godfrey of The Athletic wrote a column saying, "Who saw this coming? Everybody." He wrote, "College football can tolerate ill-managed affairs at the heart and the gene pool, but it cannot abide poor resource management." And that's exactly what Belichick crony and former NFL GM Mike Lombardi provided. He talked about the $1.5 million contract that he had. He told reporters in February, "We consider ourselves the NFL's 33rd team." The line was meant to boast the amount of NFL experience on the coaching staff, but it only served, one, to display the misaligned priorities of both North Carolina leadership and the football staff, and two, riotously tick off every actual college football coach at every program competing against UNC. And then he writes, "Of the 70 new players who joined the roster of franchise number 33, NFL franchise 33, its rivals immediately noticed that North Carolina wasn't shopping the top shelf in the way that Lombardi and Belichick had promised it would. Instead, the Tar Heels were pursuing several transfer portal players being courted by lower-tier conference schools or even Group of Five program. One rival coaches and industry insiders saw the questionably assembled roster combined with the staff of cronies who were convinced college football runs like the pros and held their breath as UNC's banana peel debut on Labor Day night against TCU unfolded. The Horned Frogs delivered a nationally televised 48-14 beatdown, immediately exposing the naivete and ignorance of the new regime's schematic and personnel schemes. Worse, a sellout crowd dotted with UNC legends such as Michael Jordan, a PR glaze recklessly cooked up by Jordan Hudson, the girlfriend, witnessed the product of their wantonly uninformed and overconfident push to hire Bill Belichick. How bad is the talent? Mel Kiper addressing that yesterday on our morning show on Sportsmanlike.
It's a talent thing, and the coaches can only do so much. And anytime, you have a guy take over, as Bill Belichick did from Mac Brown, a lot of those guys, those recruits are going to move on, and some don't develop and whatever. But that's just the way it is. Sometimes you have to tear it down before you can build it back up. And I think certainly the money that they have allotted for Bill Belichick was not there for Mac Brown. So it's a completely different ball. Mac had to deal with what he had to deal with, which was completely different landscape than what Bill Belichick's dealing with a lot more money, a lot more ability to go get players via recruits, via the portal than Mac had. So Mac did a great job for what he was allotted. Now you have Bill Belichick with the resources necessary to go get players. I'm looking at 2027, Michelle, and guys, 157 is the guy he has right now, running back, Amir Brown. Texas Tech already has the 5th and 7th player committed from to 2027. Okay? So again, that's where you're at 157, North Carolina is right now. You have Texas Tech at 5 and 7. For 2026, 68 is their highest guy. Okay, they got a lot of guys in the 242, 252, 255, according to ESPN 300, because I was checking that out the other day. You got to get guys. You got to get guys in the top 50, top 100. They're going to miss guys, too. I mean, Brock Bowers wasn't rated high. Others weren't rated high. But at the end of the day, right now, the recruiting is the key. And he referenced that on Saturday when he was with the College Game Day guys. It's all about recruiting, and we're going to go into the portal and get some transfers, but it's about recruiting. Right now in 2026, highest guy is the Chapman kid wide receiver at 68. So we'll see how it goes. That's got to be your lifeblood. That's got to be what it's about, is the recruiting, and you got to get 5 to 7 portal guys a year, which Dabo, I hope, will do at Clemson at some point, but certainly Belichick realizes, Lombardi realizes, his GM down there, the portal's got to be a key entity. That's why Texas Tech is what they are right now, not because of recruiting, because of the portal. Now, once you win, which Texas Tech is doing, now you can go in 2027 and land already the 5th highest rated guy on the board and the 7th highest rated guy on the board. Without winning, they wouldn't have been able to get those recruits.
Yeah, well, they're not going to win. This team is a mess. Belichick appears to be a mess. He's distant. The girlfriend look is terrible. You always see her down on the sidelines in a skimpy outfit before the game talking to Belichick. You just don't see coaches talking to their wives and girlfriends before the game. I mean, it's just a disaster down there. And other than running the table, winning his last 7 games, and he's only going to be favored in one of them. That's against Stanford. Stanford's not good either, but at least it looks like they've got a little bit of a handle on this. You got, or maybe that could turn out to be a disaster too. Andrew Luck has taken over as the general manager of the football program, maybe the greatest player ever to play at Stanford. And he's back running the program, but they're bad too. I mean, they're not good. And I think you have to have, it's just like any other walk of life. You got to have people who are experts in that field, like a lot of people get in like the restaurant business and they have no experience in the restaurant business. You got to know some things. I made this comparison here last couple of days with radio and television. People come in from television. They think radio's easy, You don't have to look at the camera. You have to put on makeup. You don't have scripts. You don't have, a lot of things that it's a different skill set. I'm not telling you that television is easy. It's just different than radio. And you think, oh, radio, all you have to do is talk. True. But there are some skills involved in talking over a period of time, working in sound bites, commercials, things like that. Like anything else, you learn how to do it. The first time that you're a short order cook, you're probably not great at it. Eventually you learn to crack an egg with one hand and, scramble and get it out on the grill and all that. Yeah, it's different. It's different. And even though Bill Belichick was very successful in professional football, it's not football is football. There's college football and there's pro football. And right now college football's a mess too with the NIL and the portal and all that other stuff. And it has not worked out well for Bill Belichick. And Pablo Torre was reporting all this stuff in the offseason, and he put the over-under for Belichick for this year, for stay at North Carolina, one season. And the way things are looking now in the middle of October, it's going to be less than 1. There could be very much. We'll see. I mean, I think the Dogs are off for this week since they have a bye. But if they come home from Cal and they get their doors blown off, look out. There could be a deal well before Thanksgiving to say goodbye to Bill Belichick. That's just my feel on that. All right, coming up, I'm going to read to you what I think was a good effort on my part, which was not well received. Let's put it that way. It's about a book about the Colts leaving Baltimore, and we'll get to that story next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Graham is coming up at 11 o'clock. I think if you've listened to me for a while, you know that I really like sports history, and I really like to read about sports history. And I read 2 or 3 books about it per year, and probably read 5 to 6 books a year, which is probably more than most people. The book industry is not what it used to be, and people tend not to read as much. I like to read. I like to read for pleasure, and I like to read historical sports books very, very much. So a couple of months ago, a book wound up here, and this happens from time to time with what I do here, that people will send you a book and they want you to read the book and interview them on the air. So it was a subject that I was very much interested in. It was about the Colts leaving Baltimore. And it was a very thick book, 510 pages. And I'm thinking, wow, 510 pages. There's got to be some really good, juicy stories in here, right? I mean, if it's worth devoting 510 pages to a subject which is pretty simple. I mean, there's some interesting angles to the story, and there's some interesting little nuggets and backstories and things like that. But it was Bob Irsay was a drunken liar, and he took his team out of Baltimore in the middle of a snowy night in 1984 and moved them to Indianapolis. And that was after he had lied to the governor, he'd lied to the people. It was a pretty nasty story, but it was pretty well covered in an ESPN 30 for 30, the Colts leaving Baltimore or something like that. The band played on. It was about the marching band staying intact, but it told you the whole story. 510 pages seemed like a lot, but okay, I was going to give it a try. The book was called The Midnight Skedaddle, and I attempted to read the book and had to stop. And after stopping, this was late August, I sent an email to the author of the book, whose name is Timothy Thompson, and I said to him, hey, Timothy, you sent me what looks like your self-published book, The Midnight Skedaddle. I was very interested in reading it since I remember the move. I love sports history, and my wife is from Baltimore and grew up going to Colts games with her family. You obviously have done exhaustive research. What you're missing is editing. I managed to get through 80 of the 510 pages and just had to stop. There were just too many redundant points made. It seemed this book could have easily been 250 pages. I say this not to criticize, but perhaps give you something to consider next time you write a book. Good luck in your future efforts. And my name is at the bottom, and I even have my telephone number down there and my email address. Okay, so I sent him this email. I haven't heard anything, and it had been, the entire month of September. So it's been almost 6 weeks since I heard anything about this. And then yesterday, I got an email in return. Now, again, I'm saying to him, I'm not an experienced author. I've been part of a book of lists that I wrote with Len Shapiro, and it's hard to believe, but it's been 17 years since this book came out. It's so old that if you look it up, as we listed the top players for each franchise, I said that Ron Lagway was the greatest Capital, even though Alex Ovechkin had been playing for a little while. That's obviously changed. But anyway, that's my experience writing books. But I have read a lot of books, especially books about sports history. So I was just trying to give him a little bit of a tip here to say, when you're writing a book, it's great to do all this research, and I really admire the fact that there was a tremendous amount of research put into this book. He went through, it looks like, years and years and years of columns and stories about the Colts from the Baltimore News-American and the Baltimore Sun, and he talked to a couple of people who were associated with the team. So there's nothing wrong with his research. You just don't put it all down. You got to decide what's worth going in the book and what's not. So I thought that was constructive criticism. And if he responded, it was either going to be, hey, thanks for that and thanks for giving it a try, or screw you, I put a lot of work into this book and I'm moving on. Well, for someone who wrote a 510-page book, I don't think you're going to be surprised that the email is rather lengthy. And let's see if we have enough time to get through it. Again, this arrived yesterday, and the author of the book and this email, Timothy Thompson, writes, Mr. Poland, I hemmed and hawed for weeks, debating whether I should respond to your critique. I decided to address what you said. First off, I contemplated for months just how deep my book would dive into the Colts move, a complex event that evolved over 2 decades. Since no book about this infamous event has ever been written, I decided to toss in just about everything, kitchen sink included. Okay, that's where we differ. I wouldn't have done that. Then he goes personal. He says, I knew some people, lightweight readers especially, I would not call myself a lightweight reader, lightweight readers especially, would want the stripped-down version, The Baltimore Colts Move for Dummies, a book that wouldn't challenge their 15-minute attention span. The Reader's Digest condensed version. I figured that a nation full of dopamine addicts whose idea of intensive reading is skimming the directions on a Quaker Oats box would dry heave at the challenge of reading paragraphs strung together that would collapse into exhaustion if they had to plow through a 500-page book. So I assumed that going in, nitpickers would grow fatigued just eyeballing the book and quickly toss it in the dumpster. I considered the source and began to write. This is more from Timothy Thompson. You gave up after a mere 80 pages, claiming that the redundancies made you dizzy. No, I didn't say they made me dizzy. I said I just had to stop. I never used the word dizzy. He says, then I realized what you do for a living. Chatter on the radio for hours every day with airheads who shoot off their mouths about things they know little about. No, that's fair. I would say that's true on both ends, that when I used to take calls and when I talk on the radio for hours, sometimes I know little about the subject. True. Serious, thoughtful, devoted readers need not apply. Well, I think I'm kind of a serious, thoughtful, devoted reader, but okay. Deep readers have become a vanishing breed in this culture, and style always wins over substance. Forget the shallow folks for a second. What surprised me was a guy whose whole career involves learning the ins and outs of sports would huff and puff through only 4 chapters of the book and then get pooped after 80 pages. Again, my point being, 80 pages could have been about a third of the book. And I looked after finishing 80, and I realized that I had more than 400 pages to go. Okay, he writes more. A serious athletic reader. I didn't know we had athletic readers. A serious athletic reader would drop out of the race that fast, but in the world of sports talk radio, the Cliff Notes version will suffice. Worst of all, he says, you apparently missed the whole in capitals, the whole point. The writer wasn't a broken record regurgitating the same in capital letters, same point over and over. I didn't repeat the same in capital letters, same fact of history. History kept repeating itself for almost 20 years. I didn't suffer through a patch of Alzheimer's and repeat the same event over and over. It is not my fault that Baltimore City and Maryland officials ran the same worthless game on 2 Baltimore Colts owners who wanted something done about a decrepit stadium. Rosenblum and Irsay got nothing but small talk and BS for 2 decades, the same flim-flam over and over, and both decided to book for greener pastures. Carol Rosenblum, if you don't know, sold the team to Bob Irsay. It was basically a swap of teams as Irsay took over the Colts after owning the Rams, and Rosenblum owned the Rams. He goes on to say, and again, this is the email. This is not the book. This is a man who wrote a 510-page book. We're only halfway through the email. He writes, the synopsis on the back of the book states that the Midnight Skedaddle is the first, quote, comprehensive account of this infamous chapter in sports history. The dictionary says that comprehensive means complete, including nearly all elements or aspects of something. For lightweight wannabe readers, comprehensive means a dive, not the Colts Move for Dummies. Again, to be fair here, Timothy Thompson, you're redundant here because you told me earlier you didn't want it to be the Colts Move for Dummies, but okay. Apparently, history repeating itself year after year for almost 20 years is not my fault as the chronicler of this tragic comedy of errors that the actors in this play kept looping around to the same behavior. I decided to make that book comprehensive, and he puts comprehensive in capital letters here. That's exactly what I did. And by reading on a college syllabus, anyone can flip through the 18 chapters and choose, but I'm still surprised that you missed the whole point. The ridiculous, redundant behavior of Baltimore officials over 2 decades was the reason that both Rosenblum and Irsay skedaddled out of town and Baltimore lost the Colts. Had you more stamina as a reader, you might have discovered that. And one last thing. Everybody is hip to the stale line, I don't want to criticize you, but we all know that you had a cheap shot that always follows the but, so why even go there? I don't think it was a cheap shot. I think it was a legitimate criticism. That's just me. But I do appreciate that you took the time to read some of the book and communicate to me. I think that's what you should be thanking me for. There's a lot more that I can say about many other media types in town. I do wish you good luck in covering the Washington-Baltimore sports beat and appreciate the fact that you gave my book a try, Timothy Thompson. Now, again, there is really good information in this book. He did not mail this in. He worked hard, and he put in a lot of hours in research in this. The issue that I have is to make this a consumable book, you needed to do some editing in it. Not leave out everything, but again, it's a 510-page book. And reading for 80 pages, I'm getting the same point over and over and over again. Does that mean in the 430 pages that I would have to go through to complete the book, that it would be the same thing over and over again? Yeah, that's why I tapped out. You know, if things changed, if you had 510 worthy pages of new and cool information on the Colts leaving Baltimore in the middle of the night, that would have been fine. But it was the same thing over and over and over again. And that's why in the newspaper business and in the book business, you have editors. Now, this looks to be, again, a self-published book, which is not an easy thing to do. And it's not a moneymaker. You know, if you sell 50 self-published books, that's probably pretty good. And even if you have a publisher, as we did, we sold maybe 5,000 books, which is not a ton. You know, the late John Feinstein was a book machine, and he sold books. He knew how to sell books and knew how to write books. I don't know how to do that. I wrote a book list, and I'm not saying, Timothy, you don't know how to write a book, but you don't know enough, I don't think, to get someone to edit the book. It might be a great book if someone had edited it. That's just my point. And fortunately, somebody is editing me now because we're out of time. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you back tomorrow at 9 a.m.